So I will introduce myself first. So I'm Chris from Transition Stirling, and we are a charity based in Stirling, as the name suggests, in Scotland. And this is part of our events. So I'm the events coordinator with Transition Stirling. And you should hopefully have all had a look at the links that I sent out to our website. If you haven't, please do so, and have a look at some of the other events that we are running, have run. We have a YouTube channel which is slowly getting populated as well, so have a look at some of the videos that we've been putting up there as we've been going. A couple on gardening, one on hydroponics as well. It's always nice to see hydroponics getting a view as well. And we are co-hosting today, I'm very happy to say, with Arran Eco Savvy, who very kindly have changed their regular film night from a Tuesday to a Wednesday to co-host with us. So I'll pass over to Jess, and she can introduce herself and her project.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Jess at Arran Eco Savvy. Some of you on the island will know a little bit about what we do. We are an environmental organisation that's looking to educate around low carbon behaviours, and a lot of that. I'm sort of head up the food strand for the charity. We're very interested in a lot of the stuff that was featured in The Need to Grow, and very excited to speak to you, Ryan, in a minute and learn a bit more about that. Yeah, so we also host some videos, have some events running at the moment. Please do check out our social media and things to find out more. But yeah, I think maybe we'll get started with the Q&A. So
yeah. So Ryan, if you would like to introduce yourself and say whatever you would like.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Wirick. I'm the director of The Need to Grow with my partner, Robin. And yeah, just always been passionate about environmental issues, and found myself at a place in life where the thing made sense. The thing that the most sense for me to be putting my money into was trying to make a documentary, which, yeah, so that just became a passion project and kind of spiraled there, and amazing people all around the United States and traveled a lot, and then yeah, I edited it, and that took a long time, and here we are. Now it's been seen all over the world, and it's been really exciting to kind of see the ripple effects and the conversations that are starting as a result of it. So I'm happy you're all here, and that you're screening it, and the good that you all are doing. So
good. So I think, thank you for that. I think the format that we'll do now, because there's not too many of us, I think it will be okay if maybe you want to raise a hand or make some kind of gesture if you want to ask a question. If you have muted your video and you would like to ask a question, you can use the chat function at the bottom of the screen as well, and either Jess or myself will relay the questions to Ryan as we go. So does anyone want to get us started? Any questions that they would like? Oh, hand straight up, Andrew.
So I have to declare an interest in that my family name is Stirling as well, so I have different reasons for feeling at home here. But actually, I was going to ask you, since Stirling's climate is a little different to California, how do you feel about the growing prospects? Will you just adjust the things that you try to grow? Presumably you won't try and grow pineapples or oranges. But
yeah,
maybe you will.
I mean, depending on the system, I think it's all about serving the local resources, both environmentally and with the skill sets that are available locally. And so things need to always be analyzed from a very localized perspective. There's no way you're going to take a model that's working in California or working in Montana and put it everywhere. But you can, it's all about looking at the local natural systems and what your resources really are. And that's something I learned from, studying a lot of permaculture. was fortunate enough to film a permaculture course with Larry Santoya, who's one of the experts in the film. And he was a huge influence on Rob and I, and just our perspective, and trying to understand that, you know, there is no single solution, but there are principles in play that we can learn from nature that we can apply at the local level, going straight through the food system. And so I think that would be the place to start. But there's certainly lots of different ways to technologically grow an abundance of food, or use technology in a way that works with nature to grow lots of different kinds of foods in new locations as well. So there's a lot of options on the table, and it's just about doing so in a way that benefits the planet, rather than the other way around.
Thank you.
I was super inspired with the powerhouse and the dragon. I texted Chris while I was watching it. You need one of these. You need one of those.
We did the same.
Yeah, Arran, that would be well cool for you guys in your locale. And so I was, dismayed to see that it had burnt down. I wondered, has it been rebuilt, and has it been replicated anywhere yet?
Yeah, I mean, great question. We've been the ripple effects of what the film has done for Michael have been pretty fascinating, because since October, when the film really was released publicly, Michael's received a lot of support, and he's currently working on some smaller units to help get these implemented faster. And so he's constantly innovated and working with the technology. I know Rob specifically, Rob's been working a little more closely with Michael since in the past year, as he's kind of built his things. But then, yeah, the pandemic's kind of slowed some momentum, but he's still at it and innovating, and he's hoping to have, and he's going to my understanding, open source a lot of what he's doing. And so there's going to be lots of variations on ways to implement this. Again, based upon your local resources. The dragon, you know, in that environment, due to a lot of the lumber industry there and the wood waste that was available there, that was a waste stream that was otherwise going to landfill. So it's making the most of the waste stream there. But depending on your local resources, you could definitely customize those kinds of loopings of technologies, where waste streams are feeding into other parts of the system based upon your resources, based upon your waste streams. And so that's what's fascinating about the model, is that a lot of those principles of permaculture are woven into the design, and it needs to be customizable to the location. So he's working through a lot of that now, and optimizing a lot of the different systems, because he's calling it natural intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence, as far as the controls that are allowing the system to work at its most optimized way. So it's using as little energy as possible, and creating as much energy and fertilizers and so many other things that come off of it. So it still blows my mind. It was the hardest. We probably only explained 10% of what it can even do in the film. I mean, because it was so involved. We did our best to try to simplify it and make it digestible, but yeah, there's a lot going on, and Michael Smith's a genius and amazing, and can't wait to get back to Montana soon.
Nice. Yeah, it really seemed just such an amazing closed loop system. But we've just had a question from Sue as well, as how much did it cost to build the green powerhouse? Do you know what?
It kind of depends on the iterations. I've heard 2 million thrown around before, but I don't know what his latest iterations are. I think part of it is trying to bring things down to a more manageable price point. It's kind of like, I know whatever the price point was within a 5-year period of time, based upon different economic models and what you're able to sell out of it, there was definitely like a return on an investment within 5 years too. There's a whole sustainable economic aspect to what it is, but it does take a lot of capital up front to get going.
This is a question you may not know the answer to, but do you know if there's plans to license or open source the plan?
Michael has recently definitely talked about his new iterations or advancements on the technology with the intention of open sourcing it and trying to create a network of different organizations working together to get many built simultaneously. So, but I don't know the inner workings of that or exactly. Anyone who really wants to connect with him, he has a new company called Regenitech. That's Regen, REGEN Tech, TECH, I believe. So they're on Facebook and stuff, and yeah. So he has a small team, and they're just and they're still cranking at it. He's doing all kinds of stuff, you know. Yeah.
Andrew?
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, actually, I wanted to congratulate you on the film. It's really fantastic. My last question I thought was going to the Stirling people, so that's why I didn't mention it last time, but it was really good. Given that the film is such a good stimulus and raising awareness and getting people excited about possibilities, how do you see the possibility of exchanging knowledge between people as they try their various routes to doing something? You know, do you see it as a Facebook conversation, a hashtag that unites people, or is the answer a sort of peer-to-peer collaboration around the world and informal hookups?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that's something that we're still kind of discovering in real time. The best way to communicate, I think communication skills is just as important as technological skills and understanding of biology and everything else. Because if you have all the solutions and you're not able to communicate and collaborate and allow others even to innovate on top of what you have already done, then we're really limited and we're losing sight of the goal. And so, yes, all of the above. I mean, the more that there can be collaboration, I mean, one thing we really tried to show with the Need to Grow was the value in when people kind of join forces, and with Alicia kind of meeting Eric and getting inspiration from that, and Eric and going and meeting Michael, and them kind of maintaining those connections and continuing to learn from each other. I mean, that's essential. And so, yes, more organizations that are bringing people together at the local level and more ways to systematically kind of trade notes and learn from each other, the better. Yeah, there can be no, we can't overdo that. But that's the issue, is that the communication technologies and the platforms are kind of all over the place, and there's not a central hub. And one thing Rob and I have been working towards is kind of trying to build a platform where we can connect a lot of the dots for people. And that's, we started Earth Conscious Life, and that we have a website coming out later this year. But we want to kind of try to continue in that spirit of connecting those dots between resources, between people, and systems of resources and things that are already available, plugging into that, not to like replace things, but let's start connecting all of those dots and making it easier for people to get involved.
Yeah, great, thanks. And of course, we should mention that Arran Eco Savvy is one of the organizations that's doing that in a great way. So thanks to Jess and her colleagues.
Yes,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my kind of question and observation was similar to Andrew's, where, you know, how do we get the government to support or prioritize these amazing technologies and innovation? It looks like there's, you know, they'll support it at the start, but then just really sustain and keep the momentum with it. It showed the vulnerability of that in the film. And yeah, I was just thinking, you know, maybe the government needs us or communities to show them that that's what we want. But then there's that huge education, quite a complex education gap that needs filling there. And how do we do that? And I was just thinking just how these movements across the world have started with something really simple. And in the film, you know, it was the not a non-GMO cookie. The plastics campaign, it was a plastic straw. And I was just thinking, what could it be for this soil movement? What can we start that's small, that just gets people really passionate, so then we can put pressure on governments to really invest in these things that are going to be complete game changers for the climate. So yeah, that was just one thing I was pondering, not so much a question. If you have something that we could capture, that would be great.
Well,
but,
yeah, influencing government. I mean, it's, you know, well, we're in an interesting situation over here in the States as far as influencing the government with regards to regenerating soil. There's a lot of organizations doing a lot of really great work trying to influence local governments and state governments to really start to put a lot of this stuff on the agenda. And yeah, I mean, it takes the mobilization of people making it clear that this is what they want. And there's just so many ways to go about that, and so many people who already have a lot of resources and who already just have a lot of connections to sort of put energy there or collaborate. I mean, you know, we all need to kind of understand what people are already doing and then build from there, you know, because the temptation to just start from scratch or something is good, and but we should, you know, we got to understand what everyone's already doing and kind of how can we improve that, how can we scale it up, and how can we bring it into places where it's not being done yet. And yeah, communication is such a critical part, because the education gap, which is kind of one of the reasons that we started in the film, you know, one of the first quotes in the film about, you know, you know, if you're planning for 100 years or whatever, like, educate children. To me, when we started making The Need to Grow, I had just become a father, and so that was like, it's like, well, no matter what the short-term solution is, the long-term solution will always involve educating kids in a way where they understand these things. And it's not something where they need to interrupt the flow of their life like I did to kind of learn some of these things at 30 or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, well, then this is where I need to put my energy. That's really difficult for a lot of people. And that it creates the complexity of what needs to be communicated and understood increases the longer someone's alive, like, and to unlearn things and stuff. So that's always going to be part of the long-term solution, is how we raise our kids, and having that educational resilience and connection with nature, and understanding of, hey, you know, when you're 30, if things don't change, our natural resources are going to be here. Like, it's in people's lives already, and we're feeling it, but it's not made tangible often enough for kids.
Yeah, definitely. I like the way that I forget his name, the farmer was educating the children, and he didn't say, oh, do this because it's good for the planet. He said, you know, learn how to grow because it will make you safe, it will make you feel well. And so the motivation, just changing motivations for people, and yeah, I think that's quite powerful as well, and just making it the norm. You know, this is the way that we become stronger and independent. That was the word he used, and that's, you know, a really empowering thing. I think to teach children that and incentivize them that way, it could be a good method.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting that, like, most things that are good for human health, that are really good for human health, are good for the planet at the same time.
Exactly.
You know, so if, you know, whatever your motivation needs to be, but yeah, definitely people's own health, especially as chronic diseases continue to skyrocket all over the world and stuff, people are seeing the effects of a lot of mistakes made in the 20th century going into the 21st century, and and we're seeing it with a lot of chronic diseases, you know, and that comes down to the soil, that comes down to our food and the chemicals we're putting in our body, and the challenges we're putting upon new generations. So all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a question we had in the chat, sorry, that kind of leads with educating children. Alison was saying that the graphics in the film were just excellent, and was wondering if there were standalone clips of the graphics that you used in the films that could be shared as resources, as educational resources, actually.
I think we're definitely open to that, to kind of pulling those out and releasing some of those things separately, because there are some really nice standalone pieces, and so yeah, we're totally open to making those kinds of resources available out of the film. Yeah, our animator, she Sarah, she's amazing. Dreambox Productions. Rob and I were looking for I was really concerned, well, because I've just seen a lot of documentaries where when it goes into an animated part, it just feels like a different movie, or it's like this completely change in tone and everything sounds different. And so it's like, no, well, let's make it as fluid as possible, and maybe we'll use Alicia's journal because she's already writing in it all the time, and then that'll allow us to have that kind of textured, hand-drawn, almost childlike nature to it, but it would work within the world of the film in a way that felt more fluid and less interruptive and stuff. And so when we went that direction, then Sarah was perfect, because her stuff, she's made a lot of music videos and different things that are just, she makes these beautiful magical things happen in ways that are unpredictable and exciting. So it was really great collaborating with her.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I think, you know, I watched a lot of these films over the last sort of 15 years, and there are only a handful that I consider great and that I would recommend to people. And this one has inched its way into that category. It's very inspiring. And I'm wondering if you guys have probably, I'm sure, already thought about this, but have you approached people like Bill Gates or Leonardo DiCaprio to either move your message or to help build another powerhouse or to fund that project?
Yeah, I mean, that's, well, most of the more Hollywood connections are more through Rob than with me. But anything in that direction, like, we're constantly trying to get this in front of people. It's been Rob and I, it was just the two of us for 4 years, you know, and we were lucky enough to get a rough cut in front of Rosario, and she came on board to do the narration. But yeah, it's been a really small team, and so the effort to put this in front of people, I mean, it continues, and we're doing another. We did a free online launch last fall, and we're going to do another one this year, and so we'll have a whole campaign raising awareness about getting to see the film for free, and trying to push the message out there, and yeah, so. Last year during our launch in the fall, it was seen in over 175 countries. The film went from only having been seen from a couple thousand in festivals to just, you know, so many so quickly. But it's still, it's still just, it hasn't blown up yet. There's so many people who have no idea about it. So
I guess
part of that, yeah.
It was less really about the people like us seeing it, even though we all should. It was more about the film itself, I think, would be a really good way to get funding to make some of these projects happen. And, you know, I mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio because he is very interested, obviously, in the climate and has a lot of money that he might put behind implementing some of this. And the Gates Foundation, it's just often these ideas don't have a very good sales mechanism, but I think your film is that really, really good sales mechanism.
No, for sure, and that is the intention. Is it's what we've always, when Michael was at his lowest points, we're like, no, but we're going to finish this film and it's going to be amazing. And then the right people are going to connect with you. And then you're just going to be really rich on an island somewhere. It's going to be amazing. And that helped keep him going. But that's still the intention, really, is like, Rob and I always said, it's like, if all the film ever does is help things happen from Michael, then it's all worth it.
Yeah.
And Eric and Alicia and everything, but what Michael is doing is, it's next level, and it's really exciting. So yeah, that effort to get this in front of all the right people continues, and we're still leveraging all of the new contacts that we're making and all the connections we're making. So if you know anyone,
Well,
it's all possible.
I'm thinking of making sure our environment minister knows about this. And, maybe there's a number of CCF groups here. So maybe we could write a joint letter and say, we've seen this, you should see this, and we need to build one of these in Scotland now.
That's a great, I think we should all maybe get together and write a letter. I think that's a great idea. And also we have COP26 coming up next year, and is that an opportunity to put this forward as something we want for, Scotland, or I don't know, to screen the film then? I mean, that's a huge opportunity that we should start thinking about, and that's happening in Glasgow. So, yeah.
Not only screen the film, have a demo powerhouse up and running for all those people to go visit.
Yeah, then they can come and visit Arran, where it's going to be piloted.
Yeah, on Arran, I vote for that because I want to go visit Arran. Yeah.
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 Love it. Make it happen.
We had a question from Sue Ash that says, has the film inspired any schools or individual teachers to start school food growing projects? And if so, how have these been funded?
I mean, we're constantly receiving feedback from teachers and different programs that have been started up after the film was seen. But the funding mechanisms vary. That's always part of the equation, and it depends on what's available. Like I know Alicia's garden in the film was partially the result of instead of selling cookies, she did a huge recycling drive and raised the money by doing that and some other things. And then, volunteers and different local resources. And there's a lot of organizations that may have an interest in supporting the project. So it's always about, looking to see what's available amongst your local resources as much as possible, because they may have a stake in the project and actually care about seeing it happen. So and there's grants, and there's there's so many different ways to get funding, but it's never a linear equation. It's like a film or anything else. It's kind of, there's a lot of sweat equity, and there's a lot of hoping you can pay yourself back. And there's, and there's a lot of asking favors. And, but there's been a lot of teachers. I know, even Alicia, she's still going. She just, started a whole new food forest in her community and planted like 30 something fruit trees in the community she lives in, got approval from the city, and is organizing with people who live near the trees to help take care of them. Eric Hutter is still going. I've been working more closely with him. He just put a farm on top of a parking lot in collaboration with a food bank here, and he's planning on building these farms in conjunction with lots of food banks to help supplement, not only grow food for the food bank, but also to be able to sell to local, to people who live and have things delivered fresh. So, and that was in partnership with Bank of America and the food bank and some other funders of Second Harvest Food Bank. So funding is interesting, and it's always a complex part of the equation, but it's always good to kind of talk to people who've already done it, and to get ideas that way.
And I think here, eco schools can help schools get started. So whoever that was asked the question.
Yeah, so I actually had a question about Eric and the way that he was growing in the grow bags. I mean, it was fascinating to see how much he could grow with so little soil. And I was wondering about, something that we hear a lot of here on Arran is that the soil quality is so poor and that you can't do much with the soil here and it needs so much improvement. And I was wondering about, you may not know, and if there's any way we can find out more about like the composition of what he was using to grow all those amazing vegetables on such a small scale, actually.
What's the magic blend?
Yeah. What's his formula?
I'm still trying to get that out of him. You know, I mean, he his method's very interesting with the Sox box, because it's really about one of the more resource efficient models, and the fact that you can do it over man-made surfaces. It requires a lot less water, but the soil is amended. He does have a soil mix. I know that when he replants socks, like I know silicon dioxide and biochar, some of the stuff he uses. I know he makes a compost tea at his house from, and he's done mixes in collaboration with Kellogg, which is a composting company. They make a lot of different soils that's sold, and they're local. Kathy Kellogg's in the film, and so I mean, but it's also he's constantly innovating. When a crop does something he doesn't expect or grows faster than it doesn't expect, I mean, he pivots and he teaches his farmers to understand the plants by looking at it, kind of thing. Like it's not like what day is it? It's like, what's the plant doing right now? What does it need? And he has that kind of relationship with things. So he's constantly pivoting and doing different stuff. But when they switch out their socks, it's really interesting because they harvest it all and then they do amend it. And I know silicon dioxide is something that that helps with that, and biochar is another thing. But it's getting a lot of those essential nutrients, similar to the stuff that's coming off of the green powerhouse, that's filled with humic acids and fulvic acids, and it's not necessarily about overdosing nitrogen or whatever. It's all about the ratios that the plants need, and so that also depends on the crops you're growing as well. But Eric's constantly innovating. I mean, but his food, I'm so lucky. I live 15 minutes away from his farm, so I'm there every few days, and that's where I get most of my fresh food, and it's amazing.
Nice, thanks.
I have a question. Did they ever find who burnt down the first one, allegedly?
No, I mean, that was weird. I don't even know what to say about all that. It was a very strange situation that didn't quite add up from my perspective, and we didn't really know what to think about it. And Michael didn't really know what to think about it. And a lot of people in the neighborhood had a lot of strong opinions about what was going on, but there was no formal investigation. It was a tricky situation because what enabled the rebuild was the insurance money, and part of getting the insurance money was just kind of not pushing for an investigation and allowing the official thing to the official version of the story of the accident or whatever to they were able to get the insurance money from that and actually start the rebuild. But it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. They had no security there. They had no live cameras going, and they ramped up their security afterwards. But it was definitely bizarre. No one was ever found. Nothing's happened since.
Does he have a lot of support in the community?
He does. We did a screening in Whitefish. I don't know, about halfway through doing our festival circuit, and it was beautiful. Like, a huge chunk of the town came out, and Michael got a standing ovation, and Alicia was there, and she visited the Green Powerhouse. And if you watch the mid-credit scene, that was during that week. We actually shot the film after it was shot that scene after the film was done, And then we put it as like a fun little mid-credit scene, Alicia finally seeing the green powerhouse, because we felt like that closed all the loops. But yeah, he's got a ton of local support, and you know, but it's an interesting town. It's lots of different interests, and Michael is definitely an outlier as far as his personality and a lot of his interests and stuff. It's not, you know, there's a lot of people who don't necessarily care about or seem to care that much about the environment, but there's a subculture there that cares deeply and sees Michael as this incredibly important figure, and they're backing him completely. So so it's an interesting place for Michael to be, given his background and what he's working on. But there's a lot of really interesting, smart people up there working on projects and kind of isolated from the rest of the world, and they all need to get together and talk more, for sure.
Was there a real key message that won over the local population? I'm just thinking from the point of view, as green as it all is, you start to mention the word powerhouse or power station or whatever, then you're all automatically going to get some people thinking, oh, I don't want that, in my backyard, even if it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think as far as the interest in living off grid, the interest in not being reliant on the state's power, and the interest in regenerating your own local resources without having to import things, it runs through a lot of, a lot of people on the left and the right, and, in wanting that kind of independence, and just, it's a sustainable source. If the grid goes down but you still have power, if if there's water not coming out of your faucet but you still have a well type thing, there's power in that, and there's independence in that, and a lot of people up there do care about that. So Michael's made allies across the board up there, which has been an important reminder that we have, as people, regardless of what side of different issues we are, like we have the Venn diagram is like mostly still in the center as far as what our interests are and what's going to be best for us. And we kind of get lost in a lot of the details, but Michael kind of sees through that, and has made allies across the board. So he's well loved up there.
Yeah, Andrew. Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, thanks, Jess. Yes, I was just wondering, have any of the big supermarkets been tempted to get on board, even as a sort of a premium thing, if they had to pay a bit more for it, to differentiate themselves from their competitors, for example? Is that something that could be a scenario, do you think?
To get on board, as far as, you mean?
Well, just thinking that the supermarkets are really the key to a lot of people's access to food nowadays, for better or worse, and probably for worse. But
yeah, I mean, I've done some work with this organization called Moms Across America, because moms buy most of the groceries in the United States and probably around the world, and so those kind of buying decisions do have power, and there have been a lot of shifts. I mean, since I kind of got involved in the food movement since 2013, I know one of the major grocery chains, Ralph's and Kroger in the United States, I mean, they now have organic products like on every aisle of their store, and their organic sections in the grocery store are expanding. Oh, that's great. And those kinds of shifts are important, because at the bare minimum, you're just going to be avoiding a wide range of kind of unknowable trace amounts of different cocktails of chemicals that are affecting your body, and who knows what kinds of ways. I mean, they don't even do scientific research about the synergistic effects of these chemicals, let alone thorough research into what they do by themselves over the long term. So avoiding those is like kind of a bare minimum, and there's been a greater opportunity because that market has expanded expanded, at least in the States. And so that's been, I know Costco's also, Costco's one of the bigger chains, superstore places, and they've expanded a lot of their organic stuff. All that's really good. You know, when it comes to fresh food though, fresh produce, you know, I'm attracted to Eric's model. I mean, the more you can have a farm on like every other corner, the more you can just walk to where you get your fresh food. Then you're going to be eating food in the state that it's meant to be eaten, you know, and the state that, you know, as mammals, we've always eaten food, most of the fresh food in that capacity. It's never been shipped that far. I mean, that's a weird experiment, and that's not good for us, and we're missing a lot of key antioxidants and different things that are essential that only exist when you eat that fresh. So even if the grocery stores only have organic, if it's organic from 2,000 miles away, you're still supporting that supply chain, you're still supporting all of those things. You're avoiding the chemicals, but you're still eating kind of dead food. So yeah, bringing the farms to where you are in whatever capacity, I think is hugely important.
Yeah, thank you.
This is possibly a bit of a pessimistic question, but some people know me as a pessimist. Do you think that is achievable when big agriculture and companies like Monsanto and Bayer have such a stronghold on certain aspects of food production?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, well, I mean, yeah, it's like, it's physically possible, but you know, the social, the economic, the political will that's required to implement these kinds of solutions. Yeah, you know, it ultimately, it has to start with the people. It has to start with the education of the people. It has to start with the people deciding that this is what's needed and not standing for anything less. And sadly, I think it's inevitable that the people will wake up to these things. I just hope it's not too late at that point. But it's inevitable because chronic disease, because people are getting sick, because people aren't living as longer or as healthy as they were as their grandparents in so many cases. So we're seeing the effects of these things, and we're in the scientific literature, plenty of the dots are already well connected, but there's not a lot of communication, there's not a lot of education going along these things. It's why, you know, specifically when I became a father, it was like this big wake up call. It's like, well, where do I put my energy? Where do I, you know, and I was fortunate at the time, I guess, to be broke and a little bit desperate and would try anything. And so making a documentary seemed about as good of an idea as any other, but it led to so many good things when I started putting my energy into solutions and into telling the stories of people actually going up against these overwhelming realities of these, you know, multinational corporate conglomerates who are, you know, doing their own scientific research and, you know, getting things passed with very little oversight and implemented globally. And then years later, we find out it causes cancer or whatever. I mean, these kinds of things keep happening. And it's an uphill battle, you know, but it's like, what else are you going to do? Yeah, it's like, you got to fight the good fight, and but the power's with the people. Like the people will outnumber these corporations, and that's why I can't see some kind of top-down approach. I mean, I think things need to change from the top down, but things need to be there need to be earthquakes from the ground up. I mean, there needs to be mass awakening and people implementing and not waiting for permission. These things just need to start happening. Yeah, but it's not lost on me the gravity of the situation.
Thank you. I agree with that, and I also think it is a more bottom-up approach. You do need to mobilise the people. I think Jude maybe wants to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we're having those very relevant conversations now with our different food group stakeholders on the island, and just talking about the real barriers that are on Arran at the moment, with people supporting local food and getting access. And the main things that are coming out are that cost is a big barrier, and then the convenience of it. Everyone likes that one-stop shop where they can get everything at once. And even if they do want to support their local business, they're at that big shop and they can just, it's just, they have to be, we're relying on these highly motivated individuals. How can we make it, how can we overcome those barriers? So yeah, I'm kind of also a little bit pessimistic about it all, because I think that it needs to be, both approaches meet in the middle kind of thing. But yeah, we're having a lot of these relevant conversations, which are, it's very encouraging to be happening now. And hopefully it can lead to something, and hopefully we can get this film out to be watched by everyone within our community, because that could drive something new as well that supports the education, and yeah, we could keep that momentum going.
Carrying on from Jude's point there, with the city farm, what is his pricing like compared with the big supermarkets? Is it just purely the fact people are going because it's the improved product, or can he get somewhere close to that?
Well, it's a tricky thing, and when you talk about the prices in the grocery store, I mean, in the United States, we spend an exorbitant amount of money subsidizing cheap food to bring those prices down, to make up for how expensive it is to transport and everything else, and the cost of the chemicals used and everything else. So yeah, I mean, it's an unfair situation to that extent. The advantages of buying direct from farmers, so you cut out the middleman, so that's part of the cost makeup for sure. And I think one way or another, there's the the reality is that if you're not willing to spend money on food that's going to allow your cells to heal and your microbiome to be healthy and for you to be optimized mentally, well, then you're going to feel those effects later in life, and you're going to be paying the costs and illness and sickness. So again, I don't think you're ever gonna it's never gonna be this fast food type of no, you can eat amazing food for a few bucks a day, or but it's, if you want to get honest about the economics, is the economics of the economics of the last 30 years of your life, which are putting, at least in our country, is we don't have really good health care or care for our elderly, and the chronic illnesses are keep going up the older people get. So it's a cost benefit analysis, and it depends on how long you want to stretch the timeline as far as where you want to invest money, in sickness later or in health now. That's always part of it, and that's part of the educational gap, is that there's not a lot of understanding about that. I mean, even in college, when I took a class on food science and nutrition, anyone who questioned the health of herbicides or pesticides were literally laughed at by the professor at a nice college, So there's just extreme amount of lack of education, and then also indoctrination into certain paradigms of thinking that are damaging and that lead to people sincerely thinking that their career is helping things when maybe it's not. So, I mean, those are all the power structures at play. And I think the educational gaps, so that people can understand that, hey, eating well, it's an investment in your health. Like, this is money you're not going to have to spend later on, or you're going to live longer. Like, there's so many benefits. But yeah, it's the educational gap and the understanding. And the fact that, like, a big chunk in the world spends a much larger percentage of their annual income on food than people in the United States, at least, I know. So that's another part, is people are used to spending very little amount of their income on food, even though food is I mean, that's their power plant. That's that's literally powering their entire body and how long they're going to live, and what genes are going to be turned on or turned off throughout their life. There's so many factors at play, and for that to be an afterthought is a tragedy, because it's something we actually have a lot of control over.
But it is right. Yeah, no, it's just, I think there's a lot of value associated or lost really with like what we assign to food. I think in the UK, the statistic was that the household expenditure has dropped from 30% to 7% over the last like 50 years as to what people spend on food. And it's kind of, as you say, it's crazy. It's what is your powerhouse. So it's really, yeah, creating that education and awareness around that again as well. Really important.
We had a question in the chat from Alison, coming back to something we touched on earlier, but have you been in touch with Michael Moore, with his very much his genre of documentary? Maybe get on his Rumbles podcast or suggest a festival with, sorry, that just shifted there, festival with his Planet of Humans film, and he's got a huge influential audience, as we all know.
I mean, yeah, we're open to making those connections. We haven't directly connected with Michael Moore. I'm sure we have plenty of mutual friends. But yeah, I mean, he's like he's pretty high up there in the documentary film community, and his level of popularity is. So what crosses his eyes is. Our film I doubt he's seen our film or is aware of our film, and so any way to get our film in front of anyone, whether I like them or I look up to them, or even if I don't, because there's an opportunity there to shift people's thinking, and that's so we're open to making connections anywhere.
Can I just ask as well, how do you personally engage with people who are, I'm thinking about a specific friend of mine here, who are specifically skeptical about the fact that pesticides are bad. For example, he's saying we're allowed to grow apples that are the most nutritionally sound and the most abundant, and then when I explain to him that it's monoculture and it's pesticides and it's just because it looks pink and looks juicy, it doesn't necessarily mean it's full of nutrients. How do you personally tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The way the film is structured, I mean, I care about that, like, because I was always considered kind of like the lefty in the family or whatever, and have a pretty kind of conservative grandparents and parents. Well, my dad, except my dad. But yeah, I mean, the ability to present an argument and clearly and present the facts. The way the film was structured, like, we didn't want to, even though one of the main stories is about getting GMOs at the Girl Scouts, we didn't want to introduce that idea in the film until we made a case on what GMOs are doing that's bad for the soil, and we wove it into the film that way. And the specific critique of GMOs in the film was that over 80% are specifically engineered just to withstand higher doses of glyphosate herbicides. So that was their critique. So anyone who's like, but golden rice or this or that or whatever, it's irrelevant, because the real critique was just about glyphosate and the herbicides, because there's still just a lot of science and there's a lot of stuff that would take forever to explain. So I really wanted the film, if someone was super pro GMO and they watched the film and they were really pro GMO because they were told that it has the potential to solve all these nutritional issues with food, but then the only criticism was that over 80% of them is only doing this. It's only allowing farmers to dump way more of these, potentially cancer-causing chemicals. how can you argue that? I mean, plenty of people do, but it definitely weeds out a lot of people who from a distance, without really doing much research, they're just like, no, anti-GMO people are like anti-climate change, or that's some conspiracy thing or some anti-science thing. And I've been called that because I was criticizing glyphosate back in 2013, and back then it was considered kind of fringe, and since then huge organizations and plenty of scientific studies have come out to kind of substantiate the problems with it. But I think a big part is being clear on the research, and try not to allow things to dissolve into some kind of emotional, non-logical thing. I mean, there's a lot of scientific research that you can point people to, and there's a lot of, and this is, I guess this is the hard part, is that there's a temptation to talk about science as though it's a decided singular type of thing. Science has always been a long conversation with a lot of firm ideas that have been proven to be wrong over time. And that's good, it's good because it's constant investigation. But there's a sense that, if you criticize certain things, you're anti-science, or, so that's an issue that a lot of people don't have a nuanced understanding of, kind of the corporate influence of the scientific process in a lot of cases, and large corporations funding their own research, cutting research studies off short before they really have any idea of the long-term implications of things, and also controlling, specifically with GMOs. And this is the one time I convinced someone who posted something pro-GMO to actually completely do a 180, was just, I sent him, because I knew he would actually read it, I just sent him the scientific research, and I sent him an article about how corporations were patenting these seeds and making it impossible for independent research to be done, and that the actual research that exists was not long enough, and blah, blah, blah. But it was really in depth, and I decided to go out on a limb and care. But he was the kind of person who actually read it and actually changed his mind on an issue, because he felt like he was just towing the line of where he felt like the main, if you're pro-science, you believe this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, oh, wait, no, this was actually, should not have been on that list. And so it can be hard, and everyone has their own bias. I mean, we deal with it, Rob and I deal with that all the time, with lots of really intense feedback on all kinds of things. And, everyone's in the middle of their own process of discovery, and you have to be patient and understanding about that. But, that's what I love. That's what I love about permaculture. I always come back to permaculture because it's really just looking at nature. What does nature do? And let's not pretend to be able to do something better than it. Let's learn from it and implement the rules that nature clearly has into what we create as people. And that's just a different way of thinking. And plenty of people will have a lot of education and a lot of college and never really be taught to think anything like that. So that's something always to kind of, you can learn later in life. But some people won't be convinced no matter what until it's on their front door. So you do what you can.
Do we have any further questions? Any comments? Oh, one from Mary. Mary has to go. Thank you for joining us. We are fortunate to live in a country. Oh, there's a film. We are fortunate to live in a country where we can meet and chat with our first ministers and our cabinet members, etc. COVID-19 is the order of the day, but this topic is just as important to our collective well-being. Jude and Pamela have hit the nail on the head. We need a working example of the technology, hopefully in the time for the Glasgow conference. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Bye, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I guess we're sort of coming to the end here, but I do want to say one thing, that if the poster for the film was like an 80s classic, man, I would watch that film all day. The poster is just beautiful. It reminds me of like Ghostbusters or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something like that.
Yeah, we did two posters. It was Rob and I. Well, Rob and I, we you know, we're both we're nerds in our own way. Like, you know, I love Star Wars or whatever. He loves like everything, all the comic book stuff. But we always like, we're like, you know, it would be rad if, you know, if the film was just about, it was a superhero film. Like we wanted to, like a lot of this, when I was editing it, a lot of the decisions were like, well, if this was a superhero film, like what would happen next type of thing. Because we want, like, that's what we want, because, well, that gets people attention, but it's also like, these are the real superheroes of the world right now. I mean, in spite of all of these obstacles we're talking about and all of these power structures and the lack of political will and people not being educated, these are people who it's like, well, they learn enough to say, hey, well, then I'm putting as much energy as possible into actually just fixing it. I'm not going to wait around for someone else to come up with something, or someone else to start a campaign to make the cookies better, or someone else to start a farm who's going to be doing things in this kind of way, or someone else to start a green powerhouse and innovate in all these different ways. I mean, the people who aren't sitting around and waiting, are the people who aren't just going to sit around and talk, but they are going to really put it into action. I mean, to me, those are the heroes. So that was the inspiration behind the poster. This was actually done by my partner, Nikki. We live together, and our other poster, she also worked on as well. So we kind of have two posters to kind of reflect the two different dichotomies of the film. In one respect, it is a kind of modern day real world superhero film, but in another, it is a kind of like it has that info doc woven into it to really paint the backdrop of the major issues and the major things that are motivating these characters. So we tried to kind of weave those two types of films together. But this poster was definitely a dream come true for us. So.
That's great.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Ryan. That was an amazing film. Keep doing what you're doing. I know it's hard going, but yeah, it was amazing. Thank you so much. And this conversation has been so inspiring as well. So thank you from all of us at Eco Savvy, and we'll definitely be feeding back to our members and sharing this film as much as we can, getting as many people to see it. We'll talk about doing it in our schools and whatnot as well here on our island. So yeah, just wanted to say a big thank you from us.
Thank you.
Alison says thank you as well, and super inspired to take action, and we'll chat with my 10-year-old daughter in the morning to come up with some ideas of what we can do. She said earlier as well, I don't know if I said this, but they have to keep stopping the film so they could have a chat about it as well. So that was really sweet, and it really is engaging the children is the one of the major things that everyone has to do right now, really, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you again for joining us, and yeah, a great film. Someone's asking, where can we stay in touch with you, Ryan? You were saying to me you have the website there.
Yeah, well, I mean, theneedtogrow.com, and then you can follow us on Instagram at The Need to Grow. The Need to Grow is on Facebook. Earth Conscious Life is also on Facebook, and we're just starting to build that out. And yeah, I'm around. I have a very small Instagram presence on my personal account, but yeah, you know, you just follow us, email us, theneedtogrow@gmail.com. I mean, Rob and I are both checking everything, so it's a real small operation still, trying to keep it going. But yeah, we're pretty easy to get in touch with. So
I'll be sending out a feedback form as well, probably tomorrow, depending on how busy my day gets, and I'll send links to the website in that email as well.
Okay, great, awesome.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you very much. Yes, I guess this ends the meeting. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye,
Thanks very much. Very inspiring. Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.